I get back on schedule to promptly get off schedule. That would be because as of a week and a half ago, not last Wednesday, but the Wednesday before that, so the Wednesday before the week I missed, I fractured my wrist. And I only actually got this as of this Friday. So I am now in a good deal more mobile and a good deal less pain. So I need to just keep going. And that includes my videos. So I might throw in my missing video in this coming week. I might not. It depends on how hectic everything gets. But I'm at least back this week, which is nice. Can't quite maneuver the way I would like, but I'm back. Okay, so the chapter I'm looking at today is The Flight of the Fat Lady. And I found this one actually interesting because we suddenly have an opposite problem to what we've been seeing. So with a lot of the previous books, and certainly going ahead, we'll continue to see this. A lot of people very interested in Harry's life, and not always in a way that needs to be. Like, they seem to be a little overly involved in Harry's activities. I spoke about this with the last video, particularly when it comes to the prediction of Harry's death, and everyone's just like, obviously we need to get involved in this conversation. No, you don't. What we're actually seeing in this chapter, however, is suddenly the opposite problem, which is a self-involvement to the point where nobody's really thinking of anybody else, and no one can then think outside of themselves. So at the start of this chapter, we have Draco despairing about Lupin's clothes. We have Wood despairing about the Quidditch tournament. We have Lavender. We have Lavender despairing about the death of her rabbit. We have Harry despairing about going or not going to Hogsmeade. And Ron and Hermione, of course, despairing about their own pets. And the argument these pets seem to have with each other. So no one's really sitting there trying to see from anybody else's perspective at this moment. Everyone has their own problems, and they think their problems are sort of the be-all and end-all. To the point where they will actually, like, very directly reject anybody else becoming involved. Ron and Hermione are not willing to see this whole pet perspective from each other's perspectives. Hermione's just like, it's just natural for cats, and is not thinking about the fact that, oh yeah, my pet is directly harassing Ron's pet. And Ron is seeing his pet harassed, and he's not thinking, yes, it is in fact natural for cats to go after rats. And it causes some problems, because instead of open communication about these things, which you certainly hope for, we then actually have arguments forming. We're having these periods where no one wants to talk with each other because they're not willing to see the perspective from any other way. For example, when Lavender finds out about a rabbit dying, Hermione is actually sort of logical. Like, I know you're upset, but I don't think you can attribute this to the actual prediction. But Lavender can't see that way. Nor can Hermione see that it's probably a really inappropriate time to say these things. Lavender is deeply upset about this. But Hermione, again, is so in tune with that logical side that she's like, you are not being logical about this. Maybe now is not the time for logic. Maybe now is the time for, I'm sorry for the loss of your pet. But no one wants to do that, because that requires you to actually step out of your own comfort zone and say, maybe my perspective in this moment is in fact not correct. Until we get Harry's conversation with Lupin. Because what actually happens is the start of this chapter shows us that there's this problem, this self-absorbed problem. And then the end of the chapter actually gives us a couple ways to start moving out of this problem. And to actually see from other perspectives. And the healthy way, of course, is talking. So Lupin invites Harry in for tea. And he's just like, where are your friends? Oh, they're at Hogsmeade. And Lupin's just like, pretty obvious, like, he doesn't have to ask, oh, did you decide not to go? Like, he's pretty obvious, like, okay, Harry couldn't go. Come in for tea. You're probably annoyed with tea leaves. So that opens that door for that conversation. Harry doesn't want to have that conversation. Lupin says fine. Opens the door for any possible conversation after that point. With saying, you seem troubled, do you want to talk about it? At first Harry's like, no. And then he decides, you know what? Yeah, no. I do have a problem, and my problem is in fact with you. And Lupin's like, okay. Like, Lupin doesn't get immediately on the defensive of like, whoa, I'm not the bad guy here. I just wanted to see if something was wrong. Like, the moment Harry was just like, yeah, I have a problem. Why didn't you let me go against the Bogart? Lupin is like, oh, yes, you were not seeing this from my perspective. Because maybe he thought Harry was seeing it from his perspective. But the moment Harry asks that question, Lupin knows, okay, we have different perspectives about this. And Harry, again, who's expecting Lupin to keep with his own perspective and be defensive about it, is surprised. Because we're not seeing these conversations right now. We are seeing people say, this is my belief and I am right. And it does not matter what you think. So he's expecting that, and Lupin's like, oh, I'm sorry, I did not realize we had different perspectives. This is my perspective. I didn't think it would be a great plan to have even a Bogart version of Lord Voldemort in the classroom. And Harry goes, oh. Because again, before this communication was started, Harry would have been defensive about his position. But suddenly he's aware very directly that, oh no, there was this other perspective. And no, that wasn't, in fact, that wasn't even what I was thinking about. And we suddenly actually had this communication style going on. All because Lupin, and from his example then, Harry, being willing to present their perspectives and discuss them, not as infinite, perfect things, but as finite, flawed things. As not universal, but particular to them. And thus, not perfect. And capable of change, which both of them do. And then Snape steps in. Because what happens here is then the next step falls to Harry. Because Harry was starting towards the, hey, about the Dementors, and then Snape arrives, and that conversation gets moved off. So it actually then comes down to, is Harry willing to restart these communications, or is he simply going to turn back into himself? But right away we actually see that he's interested in a little more. He's concerned about Lupin's safety in regards to Snape. And he starts that conversation. He attempts to have it with Lupin, but Lupin's not willing to. And Harry shows the same respect that Lupin showed him when that conversation is sort of like, meh. Harry's like, meh. But then he opens that conversation with Ron and Hermione, and suddenly they're out of their perspectives that were causing problems between them and are focused on something else. And then the end of the chapter comes along. Like, the actual focus of this chapter, along with the title, which is The Flight of the Fat Lady. Because that becomes the other way of moving out of yourself and suddenly becoming part of this social realm, is danger. The fat lady's been attacked. Sirius Black is, like, directly in the school. And suddenly, everyone else's problems seem maybe a little bit smaller in comparison to, oh my god, there's a serial killer in the school. But this isn't a positive way of doing this, because this just incites panic. The conversation way invites cooperation between each other. The panic way, unfortunately, invites a whole lot of, like I said, panic. But it also invites a lot of suspicion in and amongst everybody. So the lesson from this one, be willing to talk with people. Maybe your perspective's not perfect. Don't be Tom Riddle with the bird. Tom! Be Lupin. Turn into a werewolf every month. I can't clap like I normally clap, because I usually, okay, but I can't do that right now, so, okay. So, I'm going to keep reading, because one of the fun chapters is next, which is one of the Quidditch chapters we get, of course, which is not going to go quite as anybody planned it. And Sirius Black's in the school, so you know what? That's just awesome. So like I said, I'm going to keep reading, and I hope you guys do too. And I will see you maybe a little shorter than next week, but next week at least. Bye!